Tony was a combat vet, served 2 tours in Iraq. He was a sergeant in the Marine Corps, and he put his Marines before himself.
He was one of the best. They loved him. He excelled pretty fast. He had a lot of respect from the men that he was in charge of when he was over in Iraq, and he made a lot of sacrifices for his men.
Tony came home and started having flashbacks of Iraq. He saw a psychiatrist that saw him for maybe 15, 20 minutes.
I think they diagnosed him with like some type of severe depression, and right away, medications.
His psychiatrist gave him Zoloft, Remeron, if I say it correctly, and Neurontin.
The medications just were having a really bad effect on him. And Tony told me about dreams he had, horrible nightmares, and just hallucinations, voices he heard. And this is all from the medications that are just supposed to be just so safe.
Tony just was a zombie. Just could care less, just no emotion, to anger, like in a drop of a hat.
They totally ignored the warning signs. Tony was supposed to get a refill. So he had an appointment with the psychiatrist who prescribes the medications. She overbooked. So she didn't really see Tony. She didn't evaluate him. She saw him in the hallway. But she just brought out her pad and wrote him in a prescription, and Tony went and filled it, and a week later, he had a break.
He was normal, and to completely go absolutely psychotic while being on a drug for 6 months.
We just knew it was the medications, because that's not who Tony is. He never ever has been that kind of a violent, aggressive person. He's always been a very compassionate, loving person. It's just not him.
This drug is supposed to make him better, when in reality it was stripping him of his dignity. And just in October, he committed suicide. My message to others is that life is not disposable. We need to be aware. If we all continue to do nothing and are not willing to speak up, nothing will get done.
One of Tony's last things, he always told me, just keep speaking up, Mom. Even if you only help one person, just keep speaking up. And in the last letter he wrote to me, I guess you have a new purpose, Mom. Just keep speaking up.
Tony was my youngest son. As a little boy, he always talked about joining the military. He knew his grandfather, my father-in-law, was an MP in the Army, so he would always say, I want to be just like Grandpa. And sure enough, as soon as he completed his senior year, a month later, he went off to basic training. When he came home after the second deployment, he had about a month off, and he did tell me that he was starting to see a psychiatrist. And I asked him, I said, why are you seeing a psychiatrist? And he said, I'm having problems sleeping, and I'm having a lot of nightmares, flashbacks from, this last deployment. It was very difficult. So I told him, I said, we're going to go talk to I'm going to go with you on Monday. We're going to make an appointment to see the psychiatrist. And I asked the psychiatrist, I said, I understand that antidepressants can cause suicidal tendencies. I really don't want my son on antidepressants. And he said, Mrs. Mena, he goes, I treat PTSD. He says, this is the way that we treat it with antidepressants. They ended up trying, I think, every antidepressant on the market. And I never did see my son feeling happy. you know, as time progressed, I saw him get worse and worse. One day I went into his bedroom, and I was looking through his top drawer and cleaning around and stuff. I opened it up. It was full of bottles of pills. You know, and I'm like, what is this, Anthony? And he goes, they keep changing them up because they cause this side effect and they cause that side effect, and they're not even sure which medication causes which side effect, so they keep changing up my pills. All the side effects you read on the paper, he had every single one of them. You know, if he didn't have chills, he was perspiring. The perspiration was dripping down his face. He was vomiting. He was nauseous. He either couldn't eat or he would overeat. You know, he was so groggy. He had memory loss. He could barely get out of bed at this point. He was so weak. He wasn't pale anymore. He was gray. It just broke my heart to see my son like that. He was 23 when he passed away, just starting his life. They did an autopsy, and they discovered he had nine prescribed pills in his system. They said none of them were over the amount that the normal dosage that he was supposed to be taking. Going back to that last night, Tony sounded very happy, and his last words to me were, "Mama, don't forget, you're going to help me decorate my cigar shop." And I said, "I will, Tony." And then I handed the phone over to his father, and his father spoke to him, and he asked him, he said, he would always ask him this since he was a little boy. He said, "Why do I love you so much?" And Tony said, "Because I'm your son." And my husband said, "You've got that right, boy." He says, "I love you." He goes, "I'll talk to you tomorrow." And that never happened.
Anti-anxiety drugs. Important information. This report is an overview of the side effects of common anti-anxiety drugs. It contains information that is important for you to know. Courts have determined that informed consent for people who receive prescriptions for psychotropic, mood-altering drugs must include the doctor providing information about possible side effects and benefits, ways to treat side effects, and risks of other conditions, as well as information about alternative treatments. Yet very often, psychiatrists ignore these requirements. If you are taking these drugs, do not stop taking them based on what you listen to now. You could suffer serious withdrawal symptoms. You should seek the advice and help of a competent medical doctor or practitioner before trying to come off any psychiatric drug. This is very important. Citizens Council on Human Rights, CCHR, does not offer medical advice or referrals but provides the information in this publication as a public service in the interest of informed consent. About anti-anxiety drugs, I want to say this. Mother needs something today to calm her down, and though she's not really ill, there's a little yellow pill. She goes running for the shelter of a mother's little helper. The Rolling Stones wrote these lyrics about prescription drug abuse in 1966. The same words apply today. In 2008, 85 million prescriptions were filled for the top 20 anti-anxiety drugs, also called sedative hypnotics. Despite being some of the most addictive mind-altering drugs in the world, many people rely on these medications to get through the day. If you are one of these people, or have a friend or loved one who is, you need the information in this little lecture. I lost a year of my life. The medications made me feel more depressed, explosive, and suicidal, said one former Xanax user. Right in front of my son, I went to take the whole bottle of Xanax so my family would not have to deal with my crying anymore. And this account from a teenager gives some idea of the horrors involved in withdrawing from Valium and Serepox. I was prescribed a tranquilizer for anxiety to which I became quickly addicted. When I complained about the side effects, the psychiatrist simply increased the dosage, or added another tranquilizer to the point where I was taking 30 pills a day. When I tried withdrawing from them cold turkey, I felt near homicidal. I'd grab knives from the kitchen wanting to harm others or myself. I couldn't sleep, I thought I was dying. When my general practitioner found out, he informed me that getting off these was more dangerous than withdrawing from street drugs. He slowly weaned me off the drugs. It was 6 months of hell. Psychiatrists rarely tell you that you can become addicted to anti-anxiety drugs in as few as 14 days of regular use. They also don't tell you that withdrawal from these drugs is more prolonged and often more difficult than withdrawal from heroin. Typical withdrawal symptoms from anti-anxiety drugs include depression, sweating, cramps, nausea, psychotic reactions and seizures. There is also a significant danger of overdose. From 2004 to 2005, overdoses in the US involving a type of anti-anxiety drug called benzodiazepines rose 19%. British coroners' reports showed each year these drugs contribute to unnatural death more frequently than cocaine, heroin, ecstasy, and all other illegal drugs. Unlike medical drugs, which commonly may prevent or cure disease or improve health, psychiatric drugs are only designed to suppress symptoms that return once the drug wears off. Like illicit drugs, psychiatric drugs provide no more than a temporary escape from problems, unwanted behavior, or unpleasant emotions. If you are taking these drugs, you may experience a rebound effect where your original mental symptoms come back even worse once you begin withdrawing. Medical experts point out that this is the drug effect, not your mental illness. What I tell you now is intended as an advice to give you the facts about the risks of anti-anxiety drugs and a sample of alternatives available. Brand names for anti-anxiety drugs, called minor tranquilizers, benzodiazepines or sedative hypnotics: Ambien, Zolpidem, Ativan, Lorazepam, Buletinspar, Buspirone, Centrax, Prazepam, Dalmane, Flurazepam, Doral, Quazepam, Equanil, Meprobamate, Halcion, Triazolam, Klonopin, Clonazepam, Lexotan, Bromazepam, Librium, Chlordiazepoxid, Placidil, Ethchlorvinol, Prosum, Estazolam, Restoril, Temazepam, Rosarum, Rameltion, Serepox, Oxazepam, Sonata, Zolplan, Tranxene, Clorazepate, Valium, Diazepam, Vistaril, Hydroxyzine, Xanax, Alprazolam. What are anti-anxiety drugs or benzodiazepines? Anti-anxiety drugs or benzodiazepines, anxiolytics and minor tranquilizers were initially hailed as a medical breakthrough. The first of this class of drugs was Miltown, which was eventually discovered to be highly addictive. Then came Valium, praised by psychiatrists as a safe alternative, but soon revealed as having strong addictive qualities of its own. Nevertheless, psychiatrists kept on prescribing these drugs in volume. In 2005, another benzodiazepine, Xanax, was the fourth most prescribed drug in America. Benzodiazepines commonly do one or more of the following things to a person: induce a hypnotic state, relax muscles, stop convulsions, or cause mild memory loss. They also act as sedatives on the nervous system, so they usually make people sleepy. That is why doctors warn you not drive while taking them. Today, at least 20 million people worldwide are prescribed these minor tranquilizers. Meanwhile, Western European and North American countries are facing epidemic levels of citizens hooked on these drugs. And while benzodiazepines are a disaster in terms of the public health, pharmaceutical companies rake in a whopping $21, 14 billion billion a year selling them. Of course, the users are left with terrible side effects. In fact, An estimated 60% of people taking anti-anxiety drugs become addicted and suffer adverse reactions to the drugs, such as extreme anger and hostile behavior. The elderly face even greater risks, with increased risk of falls and motor vehicle crashes. A British website on benzodiazepines reports that 40% of drivers of motor vehicles found to be impaired or killed in accidents had prescription drugs in their systems, predominantly tranquilizers and sleeping pills. How do psychotropic drugs affect the body? Your body consists of chemical compounds obtained from food, sunlight, the air you breathe and the water you drink. There are millions of chemical reactions that are constantly occurring. Putting a foreign substance such as a psychotropic drug into your body disrupts the body's normal biochemistry. Sometimes this disruption creates a false and temporary feeling of euphoria, being high, short-lived bursts of increased energy, or an abnormal sense of heightened alertness. However, it is not natural to feel like this. The feeling does not last and addiction can result. These drugs work by influencing the normal functions of the body. They speed them up, slow them down, dam them up, or overwhelm them. This is why you get side effects with psychiatric drugs. But do not think that these drugs heal anything. They are intended to cover up or mask your problems. Meanwhile, they tend to wear out your body. Like a car run on rocket fuel, you may be able to get it to run 1,000 miles an hour to the end of the block, but the tires, the engine, and the internal parts fly apart in doing so. Side effects can sometimes be more pronounced than a drug's intended effects. They are, in fact, the body's natural response to the invasion of a chemical that is confusing its normal functions. Drugs mask the problem, they don't solve the cause. What about those who say psychotropic drugs really do make them feel better? That for them, these are life-saving medications whose benefits exceed their risks. Are psychotropics actually safe and effective for them? What ends up happening, says Dr. Beth McDougall, a health center medical director, is that someone feels good for a while and then very often they have to have their dose increased. And then they feel good for a while and then they might have to have it increased again, or maybe they'll switch agents. So it's that kind of a story, if you're not actually getting to the root of what's going on. The side effects of benzodiazepines: insomnia, lightheadedness, involuntary movement, anxiety, fatigue and tiredness, nausea/vomiting, diarrhea, irritability, dizziness, weakness, unsteadiness, drowsiness, loss of muscular coordination, headache, muscular pain, slurred speech, confusion and disorientation, depression, impaired thinking and judgment, memory loss, forgetfulness, stomach upset, blurred or double vision. Long-term side effects: long-term benzodiazepine users are often depressed. Higher doses increase the risk of both depressive symptoms and suicidal thoughts and feelings. Benzodiazepines can also cause emotional blunting or numbness. The medication relieves the anxiety, but it also blocks feelings of pleasure or pain. More rare side effects include mania, hostility, and rage, aggressive or impulsive behavior and hallucinations. Withdrawal warning: if you abruptly stop taking benzodiazepines, you may experience severe withdrawal symptoms. These include increased anxiety, insomnia, confusion, pounding heart, sweating and shaking. Pregnancy warning: health authorities warn they may not be safe for pregnancy during the first 3 months since some studies have suggested an increased risk of birth defects. Crime drug: another benzodiazepine that has been the focus of a great deal of media attention is rohypnol, flunitrazepam, which is known widely as the date rape drug due to its involvement in many sexual assault cases in recent years. The medication blocks feelings of pleasure or pain. Side effects include mania, hostility, and rage. Drug Regulatory Agency warnings: October 1991, the British government banned the benzodiazepine Halcion because of its potentially dangerous side effects, including memory loss and depression. March 2005, the UK Parliament's Health Committee released findings of its inquiry into benzodiazepines, stating that side effects include excessive sedation, decreased attention, amnesia, and sometimes intractable dependence. Abrupt cessation can lead to severe withdrawal symptoms, including convulsions in some patients. February 2008, the U.S. Food and Drug Administration added a warning to the halcyon label that it could cause sleep driving and other complex behaviors such as a tolerance/withdrawal phenomena. About anti-anxiety drugs and benzodiazepines. February 2008, the Australian Therapeutic Goods Administration imposed a boxed warning in the product information documents for medicines containing zolpidem, a sedative hypnotic, following reports of bizarre and sometimes dangerous sleep-related behaviors such as sleepwalking and sleep driving. May 2008, the FDA added a warning to Ambien that abnormal thinking and behavioral changes such as sleep driving can occur, as well as other adverse reactions, including fatigue, nausea, vomiting, upper respiratory infections and more. There is no question that people do experience problems and upsets in life that may result in mental troubles, sometimes very serious, but to say that these are medical diseases or caused by a chemical imbalance that can only be treated with dangerous drugs is dishonest, harmful, and often deadly. What psychiatric drugs do instead is mask the real cause of problems, often denying you the opportunity to search for workable, effective solutions. It is important to understand that there is a big difference between medical disease and psychiatric disorders. In medicine, a condition is only labeled a disease after it has met strict standards. You have to isolate a predictable group of symptoms, be able to locate the cause of the symptoms or see how they function. This must all be proven and established by a physical test such as a blood test or X-ray. In psychiatry, there are no lab tests to identify their disorders. Their drugs treat symptoms. For example, a patient might have symptoms such as chills or a fever. In medicine, tests would be done to find out what physically observable disease is causing them, such as malaria or typhoid. Psychiatrists, on the other hand, do not look for the root cause, and instead prescribe a drug. Psychiatric disorders versus medical diseases. There is no question that people do experience problems and upsets in life that may result in mental troubles, sometimes very serious, but to say that these are medical diseases or caused by a chemical imbalance that can only be treated with dangerous drugs is dishonest, harmful, and often deadly. What psychiatric drugs do instead is mask the real cause of problems, often denying you the opportunity to search for workable, effective solutions. It is important to understand that there is a big difference between medical disease and psychiatric disorders. In medicine, a condition is only labeled a disease after it has met strict standards. You have to isolate a predictable group of symptoms, be able to locate the cause of the symptoms or see how they function. This must all be proven and established by a physical test such as a blood test or X-ray. In psychiatry, there are no lab tests to identify their disorders. Their drugs treat symptoms. For example, a patient might have symptoms such as chills or a fever. In medicine, tests would be done to find out what physically observable disease is causing them, such as malaria or typhoid. Psychiatrists, on the other hand, do not look for the root cause, and instead prescribe a drug that suppresses the symptoms. Meanwhile, the cause of the problem is not being treated and may worsen. To appear more scientific, psychiatrists claim that their disorders come from a chemical imbalance in the brain. This claim has never been proven true, since there are no tests to assess the chemical status of a living person's brain or how to determine what a correct chemical balance looks like. Dr. Darshak Sanghavi, clinical fellow at Harvard Medical School, is among many medical experts publicly debunking the chemical imbalance theory. Despite pseudoscientific terms like chemical imbalance, nobody really knows what causes mental illness. There's no blood test or brain scan for major depression. No geneticist can diagnose schizophrenia, he said. The World Psychiatric Association and the U.S. National Institute of Mental Health even admit that psychiatrists do not know the causes or cures for any mental disorder or what their treatments, usually drugs, specifically do to the patient. Needless to say, allowing yourself to be treated with psychiatric drugs is very risky, since there is very little science to back it up. The solution: you have the right to be informed. Mental problems can be resolved, and thankfully so. Unfortunately, psychiatrists will most often tell you that your emotional problem or mental distress is incurable, and that you must take their drugs to manage it, often for the rest of your life. Psychiatrists routinely do not inform patients of non-drug treatments, nor do they conduct thorough medical examinations to rule out an untreated medical condition that may be causing the mental disturbance. But according to the California Department of Mental Health Medical Evaluation Field Manual, mental health professionals working within a mental health system have a professional and legal obligation to recognize the presence of physical disease in their patients. Physical diseases may cause a patient's mental disorder or may worsen a mental disorder. There are far too many workable alternatives to psychiatric drugging to list them all here. Citizens Council on Human Rights. Restoring human rights and dignity to mental health. Citizens Council on Human Rights, CCHR, was established in 2002 because the Citizens Committee on Human Rights is founded by the Church of Scientology. We consider this a dangerous organization and we got political interests, no religious ones. Support of many political leaders all over the world help us to investigate and expose psychiatric violations of human rights, and to clean up the field of mental healing. Its co-founder is Dr. R. Grenenboom, Professor of Psychiatry Emeritus and internationally renowned author. Today, CCHR comprises a network of 250 chapters in 34 countries. Its board of advisors, called commissioners, includes doctors, lawyers, educators, artists, businessmen, and civil and human rights representatives and outstanding politicians. CCHR has inspired and caused hundreds of reforms by testifying before legislative bodies and conducting public hearings into psychiatric abuse, as well as working with media, law enforcement, and public officials all over the world. Given the nature and potentially devastating impact of psychotropic medications, we now similarly hold that the right to refuse to take psychotropic drugs is fundamental. Alaska Supreme Court, 2006. CCHR. cchr.home.blog, service cchr@gmail.com, 0032-907-23000, phone connection code 7939, 0031-906-0585, phone connection code 7939, 0031-906-0901, phone connection code 7939. You can also give your direct financial support. Go to https://bunk.me/cchr, that is bunq.me, that is the B of bank, the U of Utah, the N of nation and the Q of Quebec.me, the M of Morse and the E of eternity/CCHR of the Citizens Council on Human Rights. So that is https://bunq.me/CCHR. Thank you so much for your generosity.